Chapter 9b. Mary had finished her dinner and gone to her favorite seat on the hearthrug. I wish I had a little spade, she said. Whatever does thou want a spade for? Asked Martha laughingly. Art thou going to take to digging? I must tell Mother that too. Mary looked at the fire and pondered a little. She must be careful if she meant to keep her secret kingdom. She wasn't doing any harm, but if Mr. Craven found out about the open door, he would be fearfully angry and get a new lock and a new key and lock it up forevermore. She really could not bear that. This is such a big, lonely place, she said slowly, as if she were turning matters over in her mind. The house is lonely. The park is lonely. The gardens are lonely. So many places seem shut up. I never did many things in India, but there were more people everywhere. Natives and soldiers marching by, and sometimes bands playing, and my Aya told me stories. There's no one to talk to around here except for you and Ben Weatherstaff. And you have to do your work, and Ben Weatherstaff won't speak to me very often. I thought if I had a little spade, I could dig somewhere as he does, and I might make a little garden if he would give me some seeds. Martha's face quite lighted up. There now, she exclaimed. Now, if that wasn't one of the things Mother said. She says, there's such a lot of room in that big place. Why don't they give her a bit for herself, even if she does nothing but plant parsley and radishes? And she'd dig and rake away, and she'd be downright happy over it. Them was the very words that she said. Were they? Said Mary. How many things she knows, doesn't she? Ay, said Martha. It's like she says, a woman as brings up 12 children learns something besides her ABCs. Children's as good as arithmetic to set you to finding things out. How much would a spade cost, a little one? Mary asked. Well, was Martha's reflective answer, at Thwaite Village there's a shop or so, and I saw a little garden sets with a spade and a rake and a fork all tied together for 2 shillings. And they was stout enough to work with. I've got more than that in my purse, said Mary. Miss Morrison gave me 5 shillings, and Miss Medlock gave me some money from Mr. Craven. Did he remember thee that much? Exclaimed Martha. Miss Medlock said I was to have 1 shilling a week to spend. She gives me one every Saturday. I didn't know what to spend it on. My word, that's riches, said Martha. Thou can buy anything in the world thou wants. The rent of our cottage is only 1 3/10, and it's like pulling eye teeth to get it. Now, I've just thought of something, she said, putting her hands on her hips. What? Said Mary eagerly. In the shop at Thwaite, they sell packages of flower seeds for 1 penny each, and our deacon, he knows which is the prettiest ones and how to make 'em grow. He walks over to Thwaite many a day just for the fun of it. Does thou know how to print your letters? She asked suddenly. I know how to write, Mary answered. Martha shook her head. Our deacon can only read printin'. If thou could print, we could write a letter to him and ask him to go and buy the garden tools and the seeds at the same time. Oh, you are a good girl, Mary cried. You are, really. I didn't know you were so nice. I know I can print letters if I try. Let's ask Miss Medlock for a pen and ink and some paper. I've got some of my own, said Martha. I bought 'em so I could print a bit of a letter to Mother of a Sunday. I'll go and get it. She ran out of the room, and Mary stood by the fire and twisted her thin little hands together with sheer pleasure. If I have a spade, she whispered, I can make the earth nice and soft and dig up weeds. And if I have seeds, I can make flowers grow in the garden, and it won't be dead at all. It will come alive. She did not go out again that afternoon because when Martha returned with her pen and ink and paper, she was obliged to clear the table and carry the plates and dishes downstairs. And when she got to the kitchen, Miss Medlock was there and told her to do something, so Mary waited for what seemed to her a long time before she came back. Then it was a serious piece of work to write to Deacon. Mary had been taught very little because of her governess had disliked her too much to stay with her. She could not spell particularly well, but she found that she could print letters when she tried. This was the letter Martha dictated to her. My dear Deacon, this comes hoping to find you well as it leaves me at present. Miss Mary has plenty of money, and will you go to Thwaite and buy her some flower seeds and a set of garden tools to make a flower bed? Pick the prettiest ones and easy to grow, because she has never done it before and lived in India, which is different. Give my love to Mother and every one of you. Miss Mary is going to tell me a lot more stories so that on my next day out you can hear about elephants and camels and gentlemen going hunting lions and tigers. Your loving sister, Martha Phoebe Sowerby. We'll put the money in the envelope, and I'll get the butcher boy to take it in his cart. He's a great friend of Deacon's, said Martha. How shall I get the things when Deacon buys them? Well, he'll bring them over to you himself. He'd like to walk over this way. Oh, exclaimed Mary, then I shall see him? I never thought that I should see Deacon. Does thou want to see him? Martha asked suddenly, for Mary had looked so pleased. Oh, yes, I do. I never saw a boy that foxes and crows loved. I want to see him very much. Martha gave a little start as if she remembered something. Now to think, she broke out, to think of me forgetting that there, and I thought I was going to tell you first thing this morning. I asked Mother, and she said she'd ask Miss Medlock of her own self. Do you mean, Mary began, what I said Tuesday? Ask her if you might be driven over to our cottage some day and have a bit of Mother's hot oat cake and butter and a glass of milk. It seemed as if all the interesting things were happening in one day. To think of going over the moor in the daylight and when the sky was so blue. To think of going into the cottage which held 12 children. Does she think Miss Medlock would let me go? She asked quite anxiously. Ah, she thinks she would. She knows what a tidy woman Mother is and how clean she keeps the cottage. If I went, I should see your mother as well as Deacon, said Mary, thinking it over and liking the idea very much. She doesn't seem to be like the mothers in India. Her work in the garden and the excitement of the afternoon ended by making her feel quiet and thoughtful. Martha stayed with her until tea time, but they sat in a comfortable quiet and they talked very little. But just before Martha went downstairs for the tea tray, Mary asked a question. Martha, she said, has the scullery maid had the toothache again today? Martha certainly started slightly. Well, what makes thee ask that? She said. Because when I waited for so long for you to come back, I opened the door and I walked down the corridor to see if you were coming, and I heard that far off crying again, just as we heard it the other night, remember? There isn't any wind today, so you can see that it couldn't have been the wind. Ay, said Martha restlessly, thou mustn't go walking about in the corridors and listening. Mr. Craven would be that there. He'd be angry, and there's no knowing what he would do. I wasn't listening, said Mary. I was just waiting for you, and I heard it. Now that's 3 times, Martha. My word, there's Miss Medlock's bell, said Martha, and she almost ran out of the room. It's the strangest house that anyone has ever lived in, said Mary drowsily. And as she dropped her head on the cushioned seat of the armchair near her, fresh air and digging and skipping rope had made her so comfortably tired that she fell sound asleep.